not like their skill set is going to define them. Whatever they are, the way they are there in the classroom, we are trying to accept them. Inclusion is something which is about the quality of education and how, to what extent or how much the child can access the content from the classroom. Here comes another word called UDL, Universal Design Learning. So how we can have something like an individualized learning plan for each one, like Sarah or Aryan or whoever there are in your classroom. When we enter into the classroom as teachers, we also like receiving these multiple responses. There, some people, they are really doing excellent work, and some are struggling with even the basic concepts, but they all are sitting together. And how we are going to differentiate their needs, and how can we like extend the support to address all these various needs. So that's why we have such a beautiful topic today, creating a personalized learning ecosystem. Thank you. Yeah, so we have a beautiful topic as the introduction was also getting aligned with something like this: how to create a personalized learning ecosystem, and is it something very necessary for this 21st world? Personalized learning ecosystem. When this topic came to me, I was thinking about this title itself, how like the title is communicating a lot different aspects to teachers and learners. So I have highlighted two different words, person and ecosystem. So it is somewhere we are trying to accommodate or help the person to adapt to a system which is already existing. So we cannot may directly go and challenge or revolutionize the system because it's already formed, it's already acquired a kind of shape. That's the education system, right? And the person is somebody who is all alone. Maybe we could consider them as a fighter or warrior, who is like in the case of Sarah and Aryan, both are like, I think not only Aryan, Sarah even has that curiosity how to advance her knowledge or how to advance her skill set or broaden her skill set to learn more about maths. And at the same level, Aryan also has his own personality, his or her, whatever it is, the gender. So we are seeing all these people as individuals or individual, they have their individual personality, and we are trying to help them to adapt with this ecosystem of education. So when I was reading about this personalized practices which we could practice or follow in our classrooms, I got this beautiful definition. Individuals, regardless of their differences, must be regarded as an unusual gift, whether it is Sarah or Aryan, whether they are doing excellent in the class, whether they are struggling a lot, or they are looking for such scaffolding instructions, they are unusual gift. Well, it's not like their skill set is going to define them. Whatever they are, the way they are there in the classroom, we are trying to accept them. And they are not a burden to the broader social structure. People must see that differences do not have to be fixed or cured. So that's something interesting. We are seeing the difference, we are able to understand the difference, and the differences is not something to fix or something to solve on. Rather, people are trying to celebrate the difference. So each individual's gift must be discovered, accepted, and shaped. A perspective where differences or diverse learning needs are getting noticed, getting recognized, and then there is a space to mold on that differences or diversified needs of learners. So here again, from we could see from person to ecosystem. As a person, what they are looking for, or what the other, I mean the people who are on the other side, whether it be teachers or stakeholders, whoever who are on the other side, they are looking for this recognition, and then through the recognition, finally they are coming to a stage where acceptance is happening with their unusual gift they are planning to celebrate, or even a gift which is actually not helping to celebrate their learning needs, maybe where they are struggling a lot, whatever it is, it's a kind of burden they are seeing. They are looking for acceptance, and through recognition they are coming to a stage where they are getting accepted, and then through acceptance they are getting part of the existing ecosystem of education. So it's a transformative journey for learner and teacher, and a lot of processes are involved in it. So if we look for what it is exactly, what process is happening inside this transformative journey of one person to getting a part of this educational ecosystem, then in one word we could say that it is nothing but inclusion. And inclusion, it's not just a philosophical or psychological word, it is a political word as well. Mostly, like, you all might be heard of this Salamanca Statement and Framework for Action on Special Needs and Education from 1994, and the revised version, which is happened in 2020, where inclusion become more political as well. It's something merged with the right of a child towards education and existence. So, and even in our country, like, right to education is something like a very fundamental right. We know that, and inclusion is something which is quite aligned in a well setting manner with this concept. So again, even if we go through the UNESCO's document about inclusion, what is mentioned there is something about the processes involved in it. It's something getting changed or modified or revised everywhere. Like, they are, UNESCO is getting a lot of feedback and suggestions from policymakers, teachers, learners, everyone. And this document is something like in from the perspective of educational psychology, something which is mostly researchable or researching topic in today's context. So they are also realizing that there are a lot more processes involved. Even we said, like, person to ecosystem, the transition, a person getting noticed, acceptance towards accommodating or being a part of the community. And why these processes are required? Because these processes help them to increase their participation. In a way, we say, like, more engaged learning, right? So today's world, children are looking for how to be engaged in the classroom rather than listening to something or by hearting something or learning something. They really want to be engaged in the classroom, then only the actual learning process happening for them. And they need to have certain fight, or they have to fight a lot with these exclusionary pressures which are not allowing them to be part of this inclusive process, which could be like, again, we could think of many different variables. In this case, introductory speech, it was like towards a particular subject, how a child feels, the difficulty level, right? So that was the one variable mentioned. But it could be anything. It could be the way curriculum it is. It could be the way cultural perspective. It could be anything, something related to the socio-economic barriers, where, like, during the COVID-19, we have seen, like, children who are denied or who are deprived of technological privileges. How did they struggle? Like, we might have seen pictures like children were climbing to the trees to get some accessibility or network connections, right? So all these, where whatever creates a kind of, whatever act as a barrier to their education or the process of education, it all can be these exclusionary pressures. Something, so sometimes it can be something very personal, like, as the medical model says, it could be something like a disability, something like a disorder. Like, all these words are very like, what to say, popular in this context as well. Like, we know, like, children are coming for some kind of extension for their homework or assignments when they feel like they have problems with their attention, attentional capacity. Like quite a lot of students are like these days telling like they have some problem with the attention span, and they do need some sort of modification with the assignments they are doing. So it could be something with their own psychological experiences, or something which are like beyond their personal realm, which is completely, like as I said, technological barriers, cultural barriers, the way curriculum is designed. It could be anything. So now the research is more about extension and universalization of inclusive approach, because inclusion is always there, and we might have seen like the special educational needs, and the schools, like something like a school very specifically for children with visual impairment, auditory impairment, children with attentional needs, right? All these are already existing. But now we are thinking about how we can do the extension work of this exclusion and the universalization of inclusive approach. How like rather than talking about segregation, how we can like practice integration and inclusion in a more meaningful way. Now again, as I said about a special educational needs, it start with the inclusive practices start somewhere like education of a particular group of students, something which is from the medical model of disability. Like there are a group of children, or even at least a single child in the class with a special educational need, like for example visual impairment, and the child is like unable to see, unable to read the notes, or even like having problem with writing or reading or even typing, the child is struggling a lot. So what is the practice, something which we've been seeing like till this moment, is something like there might be something like a special school for these children, or they're like they are together. We are identifying children with common educational needs and keeping them together in a particular institution, or there will be a school particularly for them, as I said, school for visually impaired, school for auditory impairment and deaf, something like that. So this inclusion again, there, like if we think from the perspective of inclusion, like we could see that it's a big circle, lot many students are there, and among these students we find it difficult to deliver certain like the materials to a particular population or a single student. Okay, so it is like we are segregating on the basis of something like the special educational requirement they are having, and now we have to help them to overcome this. Okay, so there is something like a school for special educational requirement. But if we see the circle, how we are accommodating the students, there is a broader circle and then segregated circle, and then some one or other way we are trying to accommodate them, like for example giving them a braille note or giving them a recorder where they can listen to the notes or class work, something like that. So it is not like we are keeping them along with the big circle through integration, but to what extent they are able to participate in all the activities which we are giving in the classroom, that's a big question mark. So it is integration, but inclusion is not happening. Inclusion is something which is about the quality of education, and how, to what extent or how much the child can access the content from the classroom, or how much the child can engage in the classroom. If we are not addressing these questions, then we are not strengthening the ecosystem. The personalized ecosystem is not at all forming any shape there. Now all these were happen like something like, as I said, disability based inclusive educational practices. But again, if we see this disability inclusive education from the context of our country, uh, there are certain challenges again in front of us. One is less resourced settings. If I say an example for this, you might have seen like the way people with visual impairment, because I love to quote a lot about visual impairment because that's my research area. So I have more information about them compared to any other disability. So if we see how foreign countries are accommodating this disability, just one example I can say, like how the buses are like the I mean the where the entry, the gate, how much lower the entry gate for a bus is. the way it is designed. If they are coming in a wheelchair, easily they can get into the wheelchair and there will be a space for the wheelchair to go in. But imagine our own country, how we are accommodating. Let's just take the example of school bus or university buses run by universities for their own educational purpose. Have you seen any these kind of accommodations we are doing in our country? That's one just example. And then we could think of many more, like if a child again who goes or travel in wheelchair, how much is the accessibility to all the buildings in the university? There might be certain provisions in certain buildings, but not all the, especially like an auditorium, or like if there is something like a, what to say, amphitheater where lot many steps are there, and we used to do a lot of cultural activities and interaction in such spaces. What extent these spaces are accessible for such children who have a special need? So we do have a lot of less resourced settings, and this is nothing to do with the curriculum or anything, just the physical space. Whether there is an accessibility for the physical space, that itself a big question. And there is a different reasons for discrimination that's coming in the next slide, because in our country, lot many ways the discrimination is experienced. So one example is the hijab issue. If you have like heard of this, like in Karnataka state, how the children were not being allowed to enter the school just because of their something like a dress, or maybe from the religious perspective it will be something different. But again, what kind of a barrier it is? So we do have lot many discriminations, and we have lot many barriers, and we have to work on that. So and unrealistic practices, because we feel like the foreign documents, and we are trying to imitate or follow these foreign documents without understanding the existing realistic barriers which are there in our country. So this makes lot many unrealistic practices, and we need to work on that. Now, as I said earlier, when we see children with special requirement, we have the tendency of this segregation. Okay, we identify like there is one particular child in class A, okay, Miss X or Mr. X, he or she is demanding this or having a problem. So segregation is happening there, not understanding segregation. And then we are working on that through integration. Okay, he or she is asking for the notes. I can produce braille notes. I can give recorders. Okay, I can give a magnifier if it is something like low vision. Okay, fine. So somewhere we are trying to see the demands, and that's it. Now, finally, what is happening here? It is not inclusion, it is exclusion. Yeah, their demands, somehow the demands are getting managed or done with, but the actual engagement is not at all happening. But in inclusive education, or as per the perspective of inclusion, these disabilities or these differences or diversities, we need to recognize and we have to celebrate it. Rather than segregate, we have to celebrate it. And if we have to celebrate as a class, we need to form as a community, something like, which is again, I think, have certain connotations with the word ecosystem. If we are not acting like a community, this cannot be celebrated. Now, again, like this is a statistics I collected from just Google, which shows how the existing educational qualification of certain people in India. So in this, you could see like the literate and illiterate, how the percentage is. Literate is somewhere around 66.40 percentage wise. And then if we see like gender wise, male are 66.40 and females are 47.20. So again, the gender, that discretion is still here, and this is something quite recent statistics from 2023. And then again, there is another category like scheduled caste. You could see among the scheduled caste itself, we could see that only 66.40 percentage of people are coming as literate, and 47.20 is something from the female section of this scheduled caste. So this graph itself speaks a lot about how much educational gathering, as it is titled, education gathering pace among Dalits. So how much the socio-economic the demographic related variables are playing their role in inclusivity, that also we could see from the graph. And why this, as I said earlier, like inclusion is a process, and these processes are having some sort of aim. It is not just how you are going to deliver the content in the class or make sure that all children are getting the resources. It's something beyond that. Inclusion has something like, it's a philosophical word as well. So inclusion is for interaction rather than delivery of material. It is for interaction. And what kind of interaction they are looking for? Rich and diverse learning interaction. Why it is rich and diverse? Because children are having various needs and they need to know each other. For example, if we are forming a group of 5 or 6 children together for a project work or something like that, they should know each other. What are their strengths? Some might be very confident about communicating, some might be very confident about doing the background reading work. Each one has different skill sets, so they are able to communicate with each other and seeing the strength of each one, and then the interaction will be more meaningful. And the heterogeneous students should interact rather than children with visual impairment or children with ADHD, or they are sitting together and knowing each other. We need to have this pool, something like very heterogeneous. They all need to sit together and work together. Then only communities of mutual learners or that ecosystem will be forming. So finally, as we talk about interaction, there is an outcome for this interaction that will be again a space, an interactive learning space. This interactive learning space, what actually making this interactive learning space, it is dialogue, conversation. They are talking about each other and they know very well about who they are, who the other person is, and how we could accommodate their needs and challenges. Okay, so there is a collective thinking, community thinking possible. And this will enhance their academic achievement. And only through this vulnerable group of students are going to get beneficial. And this is not only for them, as we said, it is more for it is for everyone. It is these dialogic learning environments are for everyone and need to be promoted. Then this learning space, again, these are all broader terminologies like space, as I mentioned earlier, physical space I mentioned, like how a child is going to access a certain portion of your classroom or university building. Okay, there are certain restrictions. Okay, a wheelchair cannot go. So that's about the physical space, how much the space is accessible, the physical space. And there need to be a learning space as well. Space is, again, it's a broader concept. So learning space is something, how much respect we are giving for children with diversified needs, or they are coming from different contexts, and how we are going to create this respect through classroom design, classroom procedures, and classroom strategies. And here comes another word called UDL, Universal Design Learning. So how we can have something like an individualized learning plan for each one, like Sarah or Aryan or whoever there are in your classroom, how you are able to prepare a very individualized, personalized, customized classroom procedure or learning worksheet. So only if the learning space is not for this, then cooperation, acceptance, and finally meaningful dialogues are not going to happen. So usually, if we think from the physically inclusive space, what we could do is flexible seating. Like we need to check children who are having certain requirement. Like some children, if they sit behind or if they sit in the backward area or backbench, they might have problem with how they see the blackboard, or if the class is not that digitalized one. Usually in the digitalized one there might be 2 3 screens are there, and they could adjust the brightness and things like that. So the flexible seating and classroom layout, a wheelchair need to go through in case if there is a requirement for that. Visual aids, some of the children they need again like highlighters and things like that to see the content adequately or in a proper manner. Adaptive equipment, some children who are having problem with attention, they sometimes use this earbuds so that they could experience the silence and learn. So the needs are various, and what we have to do is, like, we need to know the child with their specific need and requirement, and then design the classroom accordingly, whichever way they are feeling comfortable. So we are designing the classroom in such a way. So it creates a lot more freedom for the students, and then they'll also feel like very connected to their classroom space. If they are not feel that connectedness, then there is high chance for them to feel very like the classroom is something like a very monotonous space for them, and it will affect their presence in class as well. So all these approaches are in a way to see the diversity, and then how we can make inclusion based on that diversity. So what we are looking for is equal access and opportunity for all students, and to have, as I said, the meaningful dialogue or communication between them. So when, in order to design a classroom or as a kind of personalized ecosystem, we need to incorporate diverse perspective. Diverse perspective not only for the physical space, the learning space as well. And how we will do this incorporation for a learning space? Having certain communication in your curriculum, in your syllabus, like if you have certain requirement, this will be an alternative for you. If you have stammering problem, if you find it difficult to talk, okay, you could have this portion of the assignment, you can do this. So somewhere the curriculum should communicate that, okay, this is for everyone, not for somebody who can do everything. This is not a one size fit all curriculum. So that communication should happen through the curriculum which you are designing. And inclusive classroom climate, checking the students, how the classroom and how the seating arrangements and things like that, and giving flexibility for them to settle down as they feel okay, as they feel comfortable. And the diverse, as I said, diverse perspective, incorporate that in your teaching statements, in your teaching philosophy, in your curriculum, everywhere. And even when it comes to assessment, if a child who is having problem with dyscalculia, dysgraphia, something like that, they find it very difficult to write, what is the alternative you are going to give? Is it okay to type and submit, or is it okay to ask somebody to help her to write the note, something like that? The assessment also, somewhere it should be accommodative in nature. And as I said earlier, universal design for instruction it's completely a different topic, but it is aligned with inclusive approaches, where we can have certain principles to design the inclusive classroom environment. So that's again, if you really want to know more about inclusion, you could have read about universal design for inclusion as well. And the classroom procedures were like certain practices which emphasize on, yeah, we are seeing the diversity and we are here to celebrate diversity. Okay, so allowing them to talk, certain special traditions, maybe starting the class with a prayer, starting the class with something like a 5-minute silence, and then whatever be the practice, if it's going to help the children, then have it. And if it in a way communicate the child about, or boost them about their inner strength, that's fine. So your own way you can have your special traditions in the class. And classroom meetings, sometimes find some 10 minutes or 15 minutes suitable for everyone. Go outside the classroom, sit somewhere comfortable, and have open conversation where these topics are coming, where diversity or disability, special requirements, and how it's getting monitored, how it's getting accommodated. These open talks need to be there. And leadership skills, let them be the leader rather than the teacher be the leader in the class. Let them take the leadership skill, let them accommodate each other. If the child is fainting in the classroom, let them call the ambulance or whichever support system the university is offering. And co-planning, have the children also in the discussions when you are planning the course patterns and assessment, where you are giving them a voice so that they could contribute earlier and prepare. Portable devices, like as I said, sometimes having the digital gadgets or away from the classroom, or saying like no digital gadgets are allowed in the classroom, like being friendly with, if it helps their learning process, like saying that it's okay to have if it helps them to engage in the classroom. And please don't demand any prerequisite skill set, like I want the whole attention in the classroom. If it is difficult for the child to keep attention for beyond like a 15 minutes 20 minutes span, then there is no point in like shouting or screaming at the child to demand it more. So that also can be considered. So why we are doing all this again, as inclusive education promises, we are trying to attain quality learning experiences, which could bring a lot many changes, not only in their academic performance, but as a person, how these changes are going to affect their personal growth. And there are a lot many studies again, like this learning can change their physical structure of the brain. So a lot many studies are there. So it actually enhancing the neurotransmitters, and it contributes a lot to the physiological changes as well. So what we have to do, we need to notice, being the course instructor or being the teacher, notice and then try to understand the requirement and respond accordingly. And again, what we have to give importance or emphasize is not in the difficulties in the learning process, or sorry, not in the deficit of the learners, but in the difficulties in the learning process. So there might be certain defects or deficits which can actually prevent them to access the whole content, but we need to focus more on the difficulties in the learning process and how we can help them. So this is happening through active engagement, where teacher is providing support and they are being supported. So this is again a talk about how do they feel in the classroom rather than the ways in which they learn. So that also very important. Now here the class is actually acting as a community. Only then, like, we have to support each other. Scaffolding is something not only the instructor can provide, but a child can help the other child. So it is something again par with the Ubuntu philosophy, and because you are there. So this is something they are practicing from the classroom. And we can, as an instructor, we can model how they should practice this, and we can affirm lot many value system as well. So we are seeing child as something like very unique, and there is no scope for any kind of judgment or criticism. So as I said, classroom strategies, again, I think this is something repetition. I mentioned this earlier. So it could be anything, like whether they are able to move effortlessly, whether they are able to mingle with other people. Some people, they might have problems and turning around and things like that. So checking and allowing or providing necessary support for them. And we are moving towards the social model. So as we see all these requirements, medical model is something which is very particular about disabilities, but as we move towards the social model, we are seeing everything. Like it is all the contextual issues, like how the curriculum should be communicated, how we are accommodating socio-economic barriers, gender, everything, caste, color, all these slogans are coming here as well now. And how we are molding, when we try to mold children, again there will be a lot of disciplinary issues will come, but rather than giving punishment, we can have a positive discipline. Positive discipline is something you can do through give them responsibility, share the responsibility with them, like a child is taking the responsibility for themselves and the classroom, so attributing responsibility to them, so they can have very thoughtful deliberate choices, and they learn, and we don't have to give some kind of negative comments or punishment. So all these are again helping us to affirm their diversity, and we can celebrate the differences as well. So they are getting a space for their voice, they can communicate easily, and learning become a very cooperative task. Together they are learning, and unknowingly a lot of other pro-social skills are also getting imparted, like empathy, respect, support, concern, and all these value system are also getting. And we could have a look at our learning objective as well, like whether what learning objectives which we are creating or setting for the curriculum, is it something achievable for the child, measurable, and the scaffolding, I think this is also we mentioned. But the scaffolding is not from the instructor, but the instructional support, it should be something like a community practice. Let the child be also get part of the scaffolding process. You are supporting them by adding responsibility. So again, like what when you are preparing the curriculum for them, you can have certain questions in your mind, like what are the different channels I can share this information. For example, if I am coming with a video of where like a school which is completely different, like there are many examples, like schools which are under the bridge, schools in the slum, lot many examples from India, and Teach India initiative. Okay, so I'm showing the video and having some reflections on it, or whichever way you want to communicate the information, and what are the meaning they are going to derive. So it become a learner centered, because scaffolding, where I said like they are also being part of the learning process. So learning cooperative and become a group work, then only the community aspect is getting actualized. And one thing is, again, we have to check what they actually know about all the concepts which we are going to communicate. There might be misconceptions because of, again, the misconceptions happen through the deficits or the barriers which they have experienced before. So we could emphasize more on in their interest and aspirations, and by clearing out all the misconceptions. And very ideally something like a very multi-sensory model communications, communicating through, usually the classrooms were like something, they see the blackboard and they listen to the teacher and done with it. But nowadays children are like more like, what to say, they like to engage a lot with the learning material. So moment feeling, if they want to dance in the class for a rhyme, that's fine. So they allow them to feel. If you're teaching a disease, let them see the clips, how it looks like, what are their testimonials or things like that, and allow them to experience it, and then allow them to share a lot more about what they are going through. So all these assessments should be more like diagnostic in nature, where we can format them, the learning process. It will be something like very productive for the child and the learner as well. And there, if you, again, if you really want to systematically understand inclusive pedagogy, there are these two things. You could go and read more down, seven pillars of inclusion, where seven different points are mentioned, and Lohrmann's pillars, like there is also like certain factors which actually enhance inclusion has been mentioned. So Down and Lohrmann can be a good reading for understanding much more about inclusion. And yeah, like next is the digital space. Like I don't have to say much about it, because everywhere we are seeing like children are like, whenever they have something like a doubt or something, immediately they ask the Google, right? Google explain this. So accessibility of learning material is happening a lot with digital tools. So digital space we can't avoid, and especially for inclusive setup, assistive technologies are a requirement. So if we can encourage more of technology, and then that would be really, really great. And you can design the curriculum in such a way. And these technologies, the assistive technologies, will help them to have a lot more like collaborative learning experiences, seeing, experiencing. All this multi-sensory mode will get activated through the providing this digital space. So the physical space, learning space, and the digital space, all these are working together. So, but still we have, as I said earlier, we have a lot many challenges in our country. If we see, as I said, like the example of the bus, how much it is accessible for a wheelchair, or a person who is traveling in wheelchair. So we need to identify specific disabilities a lot more, and the requirement, and how much training we can provide. We need to see that adaptation also, how much the syllabus or curriculum are getting adapted. If it is not accommodative in nature, we could practice, we can bring that change in the institute which we are part of. And the resources, we don't have much resources. For example, how many books are available for children with visual impairment in braille format? Are there any newspapers for them? Nothing. So lack of resources. And assessment platforms are again like we haven't explored much about what are the alternative assessment platforms. So we can always have something like a checklist before we start the class, where there is a possibility for creating a personalized ecosystem. So yeah, thank you.
Ma'am, we have our first question here. Is inclusion more about infrastructure and resources than about curriculum? In which case, school leadership has a big role to play.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as I said, inclusion is more kind of like a very philosophical terminology, and it's political too. I mentioned that. And we are looking for spaces because it is a process, right? As I mentioned, inclusion is a process which is happening through interaction, and it happens at a space. So, the space has again different layers. There is a physical space which I mentioned, which is a lot more connected with infrastructure, right? And there is a learning space which is all about the resources, curriculum, all the school climate which is there with the learning space. And it goes beyond, like social space, cultural space, community. So it has many different layers. So I didn't touch most of them. I just started with the physical space because the physical space is something which is the mostly needed as an initial step, right? You need a classroom where you could go inside, sit comfortably, and access the content. That's the physical space. So it starts with that, which is more about the infrastructure and the resources, how the building and things like. But it goes beyond that. I think I have answered that question.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. We have another question here. Please throw more light on IEPs.
Okay, so IEPs are individualized education plan. It is again, as I said about the universal design, it is again another area where you are interacting with the child, having a very deep conversation. Not only the child, sometimes you need to get to know about the details through the informants, parents, or the people who are helping, like a therapist, doctor, whoever, helping the child. You are sitting with them, and then together, not as an educational psychologist or as a like what to say special educator, not as an individual's work, but as a group work. You all are sitting together and designing a learning plan for the child. This is what IEP is meant. So that's again, it's a group work which is trying to help that individual with that individual child to attain more like engagement, or to have more engagement in the classroom. So IEP is also like UDL. It is again another area which is related to inclusive education.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. Do we have any more questions?
Maybe till the next question comes, I can share my own small
Yeah.
experience.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
I was teaching pathology, especially psychopathology, there are a lot many disorders and quite confusing for the students. So when I was teaching a particular disorder called post-traumatic stress disorder, they've been asking a lot of questions. So I just played a video where a militant is going through PTSD, and he is unable to go to the war field anymore. And he's telling this and crying in the video. By seeing this, the majority of the classroom, they experience, they also resonate with those emotions, and they said, we are clear with PTSD. Okay, so this is the way I think we could help them to get engaged in the classroom. So it's just like I was feeling like very overwhelmed when I see their eyes with tears seeing the small video. So
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing that. We have another question here. How do the evaluation and assessment be changed for inclusive learning to happen?
yeah, so it's again, it's not like the I don't think the course instructor alone can take decisions, because we need to see the requirements, right? So for example, if a child is coming and telling like she or he has ADHD, and now you need to go through the diagnostic report, right? You can't just go with the words of the child. You might be asking for the report, and then there need to be a center or a panel to see the child's part, listen to them. What kind of, and maybe even with ADHD, there might be the requirements might be vary. Something like they just want the class to be silent so that they can listen more. Okay, sometimes they need to have lot many breaks, like every 20 minutes or 25. So again, it asks the people individual to individual, the requirements are different. So ask, like I suggest, like as there need to be a center or a panel to listen to their needs, verifying all these things, and then suggest how the assessment pattern can work for them. Making an arrangement like a room specifically for that child without any noises or disturbance to write exam. It depends on what the child is demanding for, and we are validating it. And then according to that, we are providing some sort of like assistance. As I said, as one example, if a child with ADHD is demanding for a very secluded place, very like without any kind of disturbance, then providing that after validating it. So something like that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for that. Ma'am, we have one more question here. The NEP talks about holistic progress card. How far will it help in the process?
Yeah.
As ma'am
So
has
the
already mentioned.
yes, so because it is not like the scope of education, it's going something beyond. Like it is more about the holistic well-being and personal growth. So without that, see, if we are not knowing who is sitting next to me in my classroom, the child doesn't know. Like I think this example of like children, they are having lot many stress, but even as a community they are in the class, but they don't know whom to share. They don't have strong bond even within the classroom among themselves. Then how the personal growth and well-being can be assured? That's why I think NEP is taking something like well-being and holistic development is quite important, and without that, this meaningful engagement or creating a community for this learning process as an ecosystem may not be possible. So I think that's a great initiative, and I'm glad that that's started to implement many places in our country.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for that. We have another question here. Can you throw some light on how to organize remedial classes to help weak students?
Okay, fine. So we are not talking about actually remedial classes. That's again we are segregating, right? You are identifying some students and labeling like they are weak in learning process, whatever, with respect to the speed in which they are doing or whatever be, and then seeing their requirement alone. So it's like a particular section. So we are not. Our idea is of inclusion is not that. Rather, as we progress, we could, as I said, like check on what they actually know. We are starting from there, and if the class is not par with, like especially for example children who are opting like introductory papers, they are coming up with some sort of various like levels. Some are having some pretty much knowledge about the subject they are going to study, some are not. So having some kind of requirement as an introductory requirement for the class, like read these materials and then have some conversation with me before the class starts. So this is as a requirement the teacher is suggesting to the student. So we will make sure that, okay, the class is as a whole, as a together, they are able to listen what I'm going to do today or what I'm going to deliver today. So we are taking prior measures rather than seeing after delivery, okay, there is like children who are not able to understand or follow my content, and this is a deficit with them. We are not talking about that. Rather, we are taking necessary measures to make sure that, okay, the class is as a community, they are ready to follow my content, which is deliverable, which is measurable, which is achievable. That's why I mentioned about the learning object need to be like that. So you could always have ask your children to learn these things or work on these things and come back to me before the class starts. Always you can do that.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. We have another question here. Do you feel it's a good idea to put good students in one section of a class and weak in the other?
No, absolutely. If you have listened to whole conversation, I think you know the answer better than me, right? We are not for segregation. We are not for such categorization. No, we are going to stand together as a community.
Ma'am, another question here. We can see across the country that students are judged on the basis of A pluses, not on their ability to learn and overcome challenges. So admission to higher studies is also based on A plus scores. Is there better ways to assess competence of students?
That's a very difficult question. It's a tricky question, I think. Yeah, see the I mean the academic performance, how this came to practice. We know the history a lot more about it, right? So the graded exams and then the problems with that. But nowadays, I think like you might have seen like. Immediately after the entrance exam, there are a lot many like institute-based entrance exam. You could opt that where the pool of questions will be something like general knowledge, reasoning, things like that. It's very kind of mixed kind of questions are there. And even after that, there might be some sort of interview process where you will get an opportunity to have some kind of encouraging conversations with the faculties where you want to study. And even through those conversation, faculties are trying to assess the child. It's whether there is a genuine need to learn that particular subject is there or not. But unfortunately, exams are part of our system, and a great revolution is need to happen to eradicate with that. There are pluses and minuses about these assessment pattern, but good to see that nowadays the question patterns are changing a lot. As I said, there are mixed kind of questions are there which assess the application level, which assess your creativity, imagination, everything there. And even like you might have like heard of this Bloom's taxonomy, where the question paper need to be like that, right? Where things like comprehension, memory, which can be checked to a percentage, but again, it need to go towards the higher order thinking. If the exam pattern can be like that as per the Bloom's taxonomy level, I think lot many this judgmental problems or things may get eradicated. So I think that's one option we could work on with respect to the this examinations, adopting the Bloom's taxonomy.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. There's one more question. Can we just take that also?
Yes, yes.
Can there be some planning to manage SDGs as per NEP 2020 norms? SETG.
Sustainable educational goals is something
Yeah,
about
I think
that.
that's what has been meant.
Okay, fine. I think it's already this NEP has been prepared in accordance with SED only. So maybe we can wait for the. It's already started, right? Only even in our state it has been like. But I know most of you guys are from across India, but many other states. You could be happy that your states are already accepted and started working on it. But we are a little slow. The state. I'm also from Kerala. So yeah, it's already have seen how it correlates with SCD, and all these policies are in alignment with SCD as well. So yes, it is there. Yeah.